When I told my husband, he erupted in anger. Don't you dare invite your parents. If you don't like living here, you can leave. Fine, if that's how it's going to be, I'll leave. He'll be the one to regret this decision. My name is Emma, and I've been married to Michael for 5 years. We were previously renting, so the purchase of our new home was a big milestone for us. However, it didn't escape Michael's parents. "Oh, Emma, we heard you're finally buying your own house," his mother exclaimed. "Yes, that's right. If you need any help finding places, just let us know. We're more than happy to assist," she added. "Thank you. We might start visiting some open houses soon," I responded, though the idea of their continued involvement made me uneasy. I had envisioned selecting our new home with Michael as a personal and carefully considered process, but my mother-in-law had other plans. Just yesterday, she showed up unannounced with a brochure for a plot of land that's up for sale. "Emma, what do you think about this property? It's close to the subway station and has enough space for a duplex house." A duplex house? It dawned on me that they must be planning to move in with us. That's why she's been so involved in our property search, offering suggestions like, it would be better to live near the subway to avoid walking too much, or a nearby supermarket would be so convenient. I thought she was simply being helpful, but it turns out she was pushing for features she prefers, clearly with the expectation of sharing our new home. I immediately brought this up with Michael. "Michael, your mother came over this afternoon with a brochure for a plot of land. It looks like she and your father might want to live with us." "Oh yeah, she did mention something like that," he replied. "What? You heard it from your mom? Why didn't you tell me something this important?" "I thought we'd discuss it once it was more finalized." "Do you have objections, Emma?" "Yes, I do. I envisioned us living alone together. Besides, your parents are still healthy, aren't they? While I can't predict the future, I believe it's best for us to live separately for now to maintain a good relationship." "I understand how you feel, Emma," Michael said. Michael listened to my concerns and managed to convince his parents that we weren't planning to live together at this time. After hearing his reasoning, it seems his parents finally relented. I was grateful to him for handling the situation so well. "Thank you, Michael." "No problem, Emma. If your parents want to live with them, we won't force it. Instead, let's make sure my parents visit our new home frequently after we move in." Eventually, Michael and I found the perfect house and moved in. As soon as we settled, his parents came over to check out our new place. "Emma, congratulations on the move. Your house is wonderful," his mother exclaimed. It seemed she was pleased with our home. "You're always welcome to visit," I replied warmly. That evening, we all enjoyed a meal together at the dinner table. The following weekend, I suggested to Michael that we go shopping for living room decorations, but he seemed hesitant. "Can we put off the shopping for another time? Do you have plans for the weekend?" "My parents wanted to come over," I explained. "What? They just visited last week. They seem to really like this house. Remember, you said, feel free to visit anytime, right?" "Well, yes, I did say that. But could you handle dinner and entertain them a bit?" Soon after, his parents started visiting every week, and their demands grew with each visit. "Emma, it's been so hot lately, and I'm feeling drained. Something light like noodles would be fine for lunch. But for dinner, I'd like something hearty like steak. Also, do you know the new pastry shop near the station? It's the talk of the town, so I think it'd be perfect for dessert. Could you pick up some?" They began arriving early in the morning, giving orders, never helping with chores, and then leaving. By the second visit, they even assumed it was okay to stay overnight. "Where's the typhoon? And since your parents enjoy a good breakfast, could you have it ready for us first thing in the morning?" The demands from my in-laws kept increasing. Between managing their needs and my work fatigue, I barely had a chance to rest on weekends, which only added to my exhaustion. Reaching my breaking point, I made a heartfelt plea to my husband. "Michael, I really need your mom and dad to stop staying over every weekend. We can't just refuse them. They've made it clear they want to visit." "Well, you could set some boundaries. Look, with working on weekdays and taking care of your parents from morning till night on weekends, I'm left with no time to rest. Consider this. If we were living with them full-time, it'd be every single day, not just weekends. They originally wanted to move in with us, but since you strongly opposed it, we prioritized your wishes and they agreed to back off. Compared to living together, having them over on weekends might actually be the better option." But it was becoming unbearable to continue this situation indefinitely. As I wrestled with what to do, my mother called. "Oh, Emma, how are you?" "Sorry, Mom. I haven't been in touch lately. I'm managing, somehow." "You sound a bit down. Is everything okay?" "Well, actually, I shared with my mother the difficulties I was facing with my mother-in-law's constant visits since our move. My mother expressed concern and said, 'That sounds really challenging. I can imagine how overwhelming it must be with settling in and buying new things. I've been holding off on calling because I know your in-laws visit every weekend. I haven't even invited my own mother to our new house yet. Maybe if I invite her over, your in-laws might hold off on their visits for that weekend.' That evening, I brought up my idea to Michael when he got home from work. 'Hey Michael, I'd like to invite my parents over this weekend. Is that okay with you?' His response was unexpected. 'No, my parents have already planned to come this weekend.' "But your parents have visited so many times already." "My parents haven't been over even once." "That's because your parents haven't mentioned wanting to visit. My mother has been patient, waiting for us to get settled. She's really eager to come." "Oh really? Well, then, how about scheduling your parents for when mine aren't coming? They've waited this long, they can wait a bit longer. Isn't it odd to always prioritize your parents who are here so often? Can't your parents wait until next week?" "You're my wife now. It's natural for us to prioritize my parents. Anyway, you should let your parents know this weekend isn't a good time." "I don't want to do that. You should just not invite your parents. If I can't have my parents over because of that, then your parents shouldn't come to our house either. They gave you to me, so they should be prepared not to see their daughter all the time." "That's unreasonable. Why shouldn't I be able to invite my parents? Even though I'm married, isn't it natural for them to want to see their family?" Despite Michael's firm refusal, I proposed a compromise. "All right, let's skip this weekend, but from now on, let's try to alternate inviting each other's parents on a regular basis." "How about that?" That's exactly. If you're going to suggest something as troublesome as this, we might as well not invite your parents at all. Let's just end this conversation." "But we haven't resolved anything yet. I've made up my mind. I'm not letting your parents come over. If you don't like it, you can leave." No matter what I said, Michael only focused on his parents, never considering me or my own family. His refusal to discuss the matter and his insistence on his own way finally pushed me to my limit. "Fine, if you're that determined, Michael, I'll leave. And when that happens, it'll be too late for regrets." "Regrets? What would I regret if you're gone? Just remember this. I won't accept any apologies. Don't come back asking to return." Leaving behind a Michael who was laughing loudly, I went home and shared what had happened with my parents. They agreed that Michael's stance was unreasonable, with my father particularly upset. A person who can't respect their family is fundamentally flawed. "I'm disappointed in Michael. You should stay here and not go back to that house." His words reassured me that I wasn't at fault. Feeling a sense of relief, I resolved to pursue a divorce. A few months later, I received a call from Michael. "Hey, how much longer are you planning to stay away? Have you forgotten what day it is?" "This Saturday." He spoke with a tone of urgency. "Oh, right, it's the day we were supposed to host your co-workers at our new house." "Yes, exactly. We've been planning this since we moved. Remember? But isn't your mother-in-law supposed to come that day? Why don't you tell your co-workers that my parents are visiting and cancel the gathering?" "There's no way I can do that. I've invited a new boss for my department, and canceling now could impact my future at work." "I don't care. You're the one who kicked me out, remember? Is this really the time to be arguing? Stop sulking and come back. We need to start preparing for everyone's arrival or we won't be ready in time." "I'm not coming back to that house." "What? Are you really okay with putting my job at risk?" "I don't mind. I'm planning to leave you." "Leave? Are you serious?" "Yes, I've been considering it since I left the house and my parents agree with me." "Your parents too? They're as out of touch as you are." "Do whatever you want. I'll have my parents help with the preparations for hosting my coworkers. I don't need you anymore." "You're going to regret this." "That's what I should be saying. Goodbye." I ended the call abruptly. By now, Michael was probably frantically contacting his in-laws, scrambling to prepare for the office gathering. Since his in-laws had made themselves so comfortable, it was about time they faced some inconvenience. That problematic weekend, our home phone rang in the afternoon. When I answered, Michael's flustered voice came through. "Why is Emma answering the phone?" "I was trying to reach my new boss." "Why?" Well, because this is my house. Emma's house. Don't tell me the new boss is Emma's father. Yes, my father used to work at Michael's company. He's been away from the main office for a few years as an advisor for a related company's new venture, but he's set to return to the main office next month and will be Michael's new boss. I knew about the internal announcement, but I couldn't reveal it until the embargo was lifted, even to Michael, my husband. I assumed he would figure it out when he saw the boss's name in the announcement, but it seems he didn't check it properly. Michael began to plead desperately. My mother has prepared expensive ingredients and fine alcohol, but no one is coming. When I contacted my colleagues, they said there was a huge commotion at the company because I didn't invite the new boss. If the boss doesn't come, no one else will. They've been asking me to convince my father to come and clear up the misunderstanding. Michael continued. Misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. It's a fact. You said, "Don't ever invite my parents to our house," didn't you? I didn't know your father was my boss at the time. Then the situation is different now. That's a rather convenient excuse. I asked you repeatedly if you'd regret this, didn't I? Well, it's too late for regrets now. You're responsible for cleaning up your own mess. I hung up before Michael could respond. I informed my father about Michael's call, but understandably, my father had no intention of visiting. There's no need to go to the house of someone who disregards his own family. My father was even more enraged. My father is scary when he's angry. He was looking forward to using the expensive ingredients and alcohol he bought for today, but it seems all that effort was for nothing. The next day, Michael arrived at our house, looking pale and distressed. Emma, I'm sorry for everything I've done. Let's start over. Please come back home. Instead of me, who was staring at him in shock, my father spoke up. Start over. Do you even understand what you've done? Michael, looking pale, knelt before my father. Sir, I'm deeply sorry for my actions. I'm here to apologize. You've ignored my daughter for months and haven't even bothered to visit her. I didn't realize you'd be so unreliable. That's not the issue. I've been busy with work. Oh, really? I heard you're also working weekends. Weekends? Well, Michael stuttered. It's likely his mother was visiting him every weekend. Michael, who never did any housework, would have struggled without her help. I'm sure she was also assisting him during the weekdays, taking advantage of my absence. My father, sensing the underlying issue, said sternly, Forget it. It seems you get along well with your parents. It looks like you rushed into marriage before you were ready to stand on your own. That's not true. I do respect Emma's feelings and even turned down the idea of living with my parents. Is it really natural for a couple to decide whether to live with their parents? You kept pressuring Emma to accept your parents and never listened to her. How does that show you're prioritizing her feelings? Well, and marriage means that both families become connected. Yet you invited your parents over every weekend while completely shutting us out. How could you disregard Emma's family like that? I didn't know you were going to be my boss. If I had known, I would have invited you before my parents. That's exactly why I say you're self-centered. You don't understand anything. People like you should be in a leadership role. My department doesn't need someone as selfish as you. But, silence. Get out of my house now and don't ever come back. Afterward, my father advised his superior to remove Michael from his department and reassign him to a regional branch. With Michael's reputation for selfishness, no one defended him. Even his parents, who had once doted on him, couldn't follow him to a remote location. They now see him only once a year, if that. Meanwhile, I've been enjoying the comfortable life at my parents' house after finalizing my divorce with Michael. I focus on my work during the week and spend weekends with the people I love. Reflecting on my past, I appreciate my new freedom and the ability to live a normal, satisfying life. Moving forward, I want to cherish my parents and enjoy living at my own pace.
Since your tummy is empty after giving birth, you should be able to do the housework, right? When I returned home after giving birth to triplets, I found out our home had turned into a hole. My husband believed that I had been neglecting house chores using pregnancy as an excuse. He said now that I had given birth, I had no reason to slack off. Seeing me struggle with chores in my frail state, he declared, I'll call my mother. She'll teach you how you should be as a housewife. My mother-in-law is notoriously strict, and to be honest, I've always found her difficult to deal with. Soon after his phone call, she came around with a furious look on her face. But what happened was something I could have never imagined. I lost my parents when I was young, and I was raised by my grandmother, but she passed away before I graduated from high school. With the help of kind neighbors, I managed to graduate high school. I found a job right after graduation and left my hometown. I had no choice but to sell my grandmother's house, so I no longer have a home to go back to. Fortunately, the people I worked with were very nice to me, and I met someone who I wanted to be married to. When I visited his parents for the first time to announce our marriage, I felt scared by just looking at his mother's strict face. My husband didn't plan to live with his parents, so we started our married life just the two of us. He was a very dependable husband, and though I handled most of the housework, his words with appreciation made me happy. My husband would tell me how good my cooking was, and that alone was enough to make me happy in our marriage. Around our 6-month anniversary, we found out that I was pregnant with triplets. The odds of naturally conceiving triplets are about 1 in 700,000. Since it was my first pregnancy and I had no parents to rely on, I took maternity leave early. I had a strange feeling of happiness mixed with a little fear as my body was changing. A female colleague of my husband, who had been kind to me since we started dating, had gone on maternity leave a few months earlier. She had worked almost until she gave birth, which I found incredibly powerful compared to my situation. I told her that I felt pregnant for the first time and expressed my fears and worries to her. She reassured me, saying everyone's nervous the first time. Her words kept me going as my little babies grew inside me. But my husband didn't see it that way. He accused me of slacking off whenever he noticed the slightest lapse in household chores. I wasn't intentionally cutting corners. Despite my complaints of nausea, heartburn, and fatigue, which I had never experienced before, he dismissed them as my imagination. I'm out working for the family, and you want me to do the housework you neglected. You do nothing but lie around all day, enjoying 3 meals and naps. How lazy you are. To him, housework wasn't a job. It was a woman's duty. Sure, I did most of the housework before I got pregnant, but he always helped me a little when I asked. When I pointed this out to him, he replied, "Housework is a woman's duty. Of course, you should do 99.9% of it, since I'm the one who earns the money. 0.1% of my help is more than enough." I then realized that there was no point in arguing anymore. I gave up and tried to meet his demands while sneaking in some rest. A few months had passed, perhaps because of this stress. I was hospitalized for a possible premature labor. The triplets were still too small, and an early birth would decrease their chances of survival. So, I was ordered to complete bed rest. I told my husband on the phone, and then he did come after his shift. But staying in the hospital, you're not even due yet. You asked the doctor to stay in the hospital so you can avoid housework, didn't you? He accused. Didn't he hear from the doctor? I was shocked. I had called him because the doctor wanted to explain the situation to both of us and asked him to come as soon as possible. Who's going to cook for me while you're here? You managed to come here for doctor's appointments so far, right? You'll be fine. Let's go home. He started packing my stuff and tried to drag me out of the bed. Do you know how much it will cost to stay here? I have no intention of paying medical bills for someone who's not even sick. A C-section childbirth should be natural. Don't do anything that deviates from the laws of nature. Shame on you. His mention of a C-section showed that he had at least heard the explanation, but he clearly had not understood any of it. It was too early to give birth. The babies had to grow inside me. Hospitalization wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. Besides having triplets, a C-section had been the plan from the beginning. I would have preferred a natural birth if it weren't for the triplets. But my husband, who hadn't helped me with anything at all, was full of disdain. You just got me pregnant, and now you abandoned me. My anger against him was building up. If it were just about me, I can bear it, but 3 new precious lives were growing inside me. I'd do anything to protect them. But no matter how I tried to explain, my husband wouldn't listen. And from the anger, I started struggling to breathe. That's when a midwife rushed into the room. My husband was kicked out of the room, and I could hear him getting scolded. This was a matter of life and death, and his behavior was dangerously close to being reportable. Other pregnant women were so disturbed by him, they complained to him. After that, he behaved himself in the hospital. With one problem less, I thought I could focus on the babies. But I had to have a C-section soon, even though it was a little early for them. My biggest concern was whether they would be born healthy. But to my relief, the triplets were strong and healthy, happy babies. However, because they were born prematurely, they needed to stay in the hospital for a while. Even though my stay was longer compared to natural birth, I was discharged before my babies. When I got home, still feeling weak, I found out that the house had turned into a hole. You're the one who got away from housework for such a long time, so it's not my fault. But since you're back home now, hurry up, clean the house, and cook something for me. It was obvious that while I was in the hospital, he hadn't done anything around the house at all. Instead of washing clothes, he seemed to have just bought new ones and piled them up. I could tell he was ordering food or buying takeout every night by the dirty food boxes or containers of rotten leftovers all over the place. The awful smell was undoubtedly from all this mess. There was no way I could clean up all this mess in a day or two, and I stood there stunned. You slimmed down around the belly. Should be easier to move around, right? So don't just stand there and get to work. He never visited me when I was hospitalized and didn't even come to pick me up. I was foolish enough to have a little hope that he might welcome me back home. In reality, I should never have expected anything from him. I was still not in the best condition after the delivery, yet I started cleaning up little by little, taking breaks in between. But whenever I was resting, he would find me and say, "Don't slack off, get up, and start cooking. Don't you understand that I should be the priority?" No matter how I tried to explain my situation, he just saw it as an excuse to slack off. I also had to visit the triplets in the hospital and pump milk. I couldn't just clean all the time. He demanded home-cooked meals, but the kitchen was filthy with a pile of garbage. I didn't think it was a good idea to prepare food in such condition, so I resorted to buying pre-cooked meals. I managed to go shopping, but I wasn't recovered enough to cook from scratch. So picking different pre-cooked meals each day was all I could manage. The regret of not being able to carry the triplets to full term haunted me, keeping me awake at night. I think that too contributed to my slow recovery. I begged my husband to take it easy on me, warning him that at this rate, I might end up back in the hospital, but in a different way. But he sternly refused, saying, "I won't accept any more hospital stays just because you want to avoid housework." I continued to sneak in breaks while doing chores. Eventually, I reached my limit and fell asleep without noticing his return, sleeping instead of greeting me when I returned from work. What a life you have. Do you realize who you owe your livelihood to? You need to be re-educated as a wife. I'll tell my mother about your laziness and have her set you straight. He said that and called his mother right in front of me. He told her, I checked myself into the hospital just to avoid housework and to try to slack off using postpartum as an excuse. He would say his mother was strict with discipline. The memories of her scolding him as a child were still vivid in his mind. I had found her intimidating since the first time I met her. She had always seemed stern and hard to approach. I was terrified that it was my turn to receive strict discipline from my mother-in-law. She was supposed to come the next day, but on the day my husband rushed out of the house to avoid her, using some work-related meeting as an excuse. Right after he left the house, there she was arriving with a fierce look on her face. I braced myself for a scolding before I could even greet her. "What are you doing?" she said. I thought, here comes the criticism for my cleaning. You should be resting after risking your life for giving birth. She took the vacuum cleaner from me, put on her apron, then started to clean. She questioned me if I've been able to have enough rest in a clean bed, and then decided which room to clean first. Once one of the rooms was clean, she told me to rest there. I wondered if it was okay, but my body was already screaming its limits. Intending to rest only briefly, I ended up resting deeply. I woke up and rushed out of the room to look for my meal and found that she had not only taken care of the piled-up laundry, but also prepared a warm meal. Though there were still rooms that needed to be cleaned, the house was transformed into a livable space. I couldn't be more grateful for what she had done all by herself. Then my husband came home. Seeing the living room and entrance cleaned, he was triumphantly convinced that his judgment was right. My mom really did a good job teaching my lazy wife a lesson. I guess I've been too lenient with my wife. I'll learn from you and start being strict with her, he exclaimed. He saw the warm and appetizing meal. He started eating by himself. Suddenly, my mill snatched the meal from him and took the fork out of his hand. Who said you could eat? Get down on the floor, she commanded with an undeniable force, making my husband jump out of his chair and kneel on the floor. She asked him what the hell he had done to his own wife. She said to him, "Childbirth is a life-threatening event, and you, instead of caring for your wife who went through it, made her do household chores. I did not raise such a worthless son. How on earth could you think she stayed in the hospital just to escape housework? You disregard the value of life too much, like a monster wearing human skin. Don't you know what a C-section is? It's surgery where the abdomen is cut open. How dare you leave the house so dirty and do nothing about it while your wife needed to rest in a clean environment? You are the one in need of discipline, not your wife, you useless bust." The scene was unbelievable, like a grown man being scolded like a child. You never change, do you? You take the opinions of others at face value, and when corrected, you become stubborn and refuse to listen. Your father now acts more responsibly, you foolish son, she continued. She questioned him why he mistreated his postpartum wife, and my husband confessed. He was influenced by a male colleague. He was told that women use pregnancy as a weapon to become bold and impudent. Pregnant women slack off on household chores using morning sickness as an excuse and opt for easy childbirth using the baby as a reason. They would conveniently control the men because the men don't know any better. She was infuriated to find out that her son believed such an absurd story, and he had been oppressing me. I was worried that her blood pressure would rise so high and cause a stroke. He was unable to retort, just shriveled up. My mill had offered to help with postpartum care, but my husband declined, saying he would take care of me, which she initially admired as his growth. However, the reality was the opposite, and she apologized to me for not visiting, having trusted her words. I felt touched knowing she had been so concerned about me. My mill was strict but very sensible. She said that anyone who spreads falsehoods is no good colleague at all. She told him off not to believe such people. He optimistically said, as for that colleague, he was away on a business trip for a while, so there was no need to worry about it anymore. I doubted whether he truly understood, and my mill seemed to share my skepticism. She was looking down at him doubtfully. After this incident, my husband became more cooperative, and my health improved. Eventually, I was able to manage grocery shopping after visiting the triplets at the hospital. My mill still regularly came over to help and left pre-cooked meals that could be stored for later. I felt so grateful for her kindness. When the triplets came home from the hospital, she visited almost every day, reminding my husband of the importance of family. Initially, he refused to change diapers, but fearing my mill's wrath, he reluctantly started helping. He would attentively care for the children in her presence, but once she left, he would cease doing anything. His attitude became apparent even without her watching, leading him to busily search the house for hidden cameras. It was obvious to her anyway by just watching him changing diapers. However, the once tiny triplets grew up fast. Eventually, my husband gave in and only helped with diapers and feeding. Until the triplets started one for nighttime crying, he claimed he had work the next day, used earplugs, and went to sleep. This left me feeling like being a single mom. Then one day, he casually remarked, "The triplets are 1 year old now. You can handle them alone, right? The hardest part is still to come." Had he been influenced again by that same colleague? Upon further conversation, He mentioned that his female colleague who had returned from maternity leave said childcare became easier once the child turned 1. It was the same colleague who had encouraged me during my anxious first pregnancy. Would you really say something so careless? So now that you've been slacking on housework for so long, time to go full throttle. Childcare and housework are women's jobs, not for men. By the way, when are you going back to work? I didn't plan to have 3 babies. I can't feed them by myself. With these words, I was certain the colleague who had been away on business had returned and filled my husband's head with more falsehoods. He would leave his clothes around and never clean up after meals. He seemed to have regressed to the days when he expected everything to be done for him. Bath, meals, tea, with 3 toddlers moving around. I couldn't manage all the housework. I claimed that if he wanted the housework done, he needed to participate in childcare. But as I expected, he labeled it as an excuse for slacking. Moreover, his lack of interest in the children, he often left dangerous items like razors within their reach. When I pointed it out, he would scoff, saying, "I used to handle it before pregnancy." He even insisted that the one who notices should put away. This led to arguments, and in his frustration, he started ignoring me and the children. He would step over them as they lay on the floor. He couldn't have stepped on them if they made little movement. I told him to be more careful with them, but he ignored. Because I protected the children and told him off, he became even more stubborn and sulky. I gave up, and I consulted my mill. The next morning, she came over, woke up my still sleeping husband, and took him back to her place. A few days later, they returned, and my husband looked drained. I could tell he had undergone intense re-education. He kneeled before me, half crying, apologizing. He looked quite shocked and exhausted from being scolded and beaten back by his mother. The shock seemed to stem mainly from being lectured at work about his complaints. Angry at being scolded by his mother, he had vented at the office about what a terrible wife I was. The recently returned female colleague, hearing his complaints, asked, "Triplets?" When my husband nodded, she erupted in fury. I said child care gets a bit easier at 1 year old for 1 child, not triplets. How can you leave your wife alone with 3 babies? What kind of father are you? She told him off. Even the other men in the office were astonished. It's a miracle she hasn't divorced you yet. The issue escalated, and his boss also reprimanded him severely. Rumors had spread that he was abusive towards me and the children. At the same time, the male colleague who had misled him was being fired for inappropriate behavior towards female colleagues. He had claimed to be on a business trip, but it was just a cover for dealing with his divorce. Upon returning, he was faced with a complaint filed against him, leading to police involvement. My husband, realizing the gravity of the situation after his boss declared an investigation into these rumors, finally felt a sense of crisis. His mother also warned him that if he was abandoned by his wife, she too would forsake him. Her stern words questioning his urge to push me back to work and his failure to support the family alone when he claimed to be the head made him change. I was wrong. I'll change and devote myself to my wife and children. Please don't leave me, he begged. My mill told me to tell him anything freely, but I decided to forgive him just this once. However, I made it clear one more slip, and I wouldn't forgive him. Since then, he has changed, actively engaging in housework and childcare. He even bought cooking books for simple men's recipes, and cooking on the weekends became his routine. Occasionally, my mill would drop by and announce to play with the children, and it was a huge help. By the time the triplets were old enough to go to daycare, he had learned to care for them well enough that I felt comfortable working part-time. I had to give up my full-time job to take care of my triplets. However, I plan to increase my hours and hopefully return to full-time work once they start school. If it weren't for my mill's help, we would never be able to continue as a family. I am immensely grateful for her support and hope to repay her kindness in time. Growing up, it was always clear to me that I stood apart from the rest of my family. My name is Jenny, and I hail from a lineage of restaurant owners. My father, Joe, is a commanding figure. overseeing our family restaurant with a strict hand. My mother, Linda, is his impeccable partner, constantly engrossed in managing the staff. Then there's my older brother, Mike, the golden boy groomed to inherit the family business. I recall a night at the dinner table, the air saturated with the savory scent of Dad's renowned roast. Mom enthusiastically shared details about a new recipe they were experimenting with. "Jenny, you'll love this one. It has that fancy herb you adore. What's it called again?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. "Thyme," I mumbled, idly picking at my food. Mike, mouthful, laughed dismissively from across the table. "Who cares about some dumb herb? Wait till you see the new grill Dad's getting for the restaurant. That's the real deal." Dad nodded, his gaze fixed on me. "Speaking of the restaurant, Jenny, when are you going to start taking an interest?" "You're not getting any younger." Attempting to make myself inconspicuous in my chair, I responded, "When I'm Dad. I like being outside with the plants and stuff." Mom sighed, exchanging a glance with Dad. "Plants? What are you going to do with plants? You need a real job, Jenny, something to fall back on." A knot tightened in my stomach. It was the same conversation every time, but Grandma Rose understood. She lived in a small house surrounded by a breathtaking garden on the outskirts of town. Grandma Rose was different from my parents, gentle and patient. One day, as I found her in the garden, hands immersed in the soil, she smiled brightly. "Jenny, dear, come help me plant these tulips." Sitting beside her, feeling the cool dirt on my hands, I confided, "Grandma, why don't Mom and Dad understand? I love being here with the plants." Grandma Rose wiped her brow, looking at me with wise eyes. "Your parents just want what's best for you, Jenny, but they don't see the world the same way we do. There's magic in these plants in the earth. It's okay to be different." I clung to Grandma Rose's words, even as the pressure from my family intensified. High school graduation marked a crossroads. The house buzzed with excitement over Mike's plans to join Dad at the restaurant. Amidst it all, I felt like a spectator in my own life. One evening, as we gathered in the living room, Dad spoke passionately about expanding the restaurant, eyes gleaming with ambition. Mom turned to me, her voice sharp. "And what about you, Jenny? Ready to step up, handle the front desk, learn the ropes?" Taking a deep breath, I mustered the courage to speak my truth. "Actually, I'm not going to work at the restaurant. I'm going to study landscape design." The room fell silent. Dad's face turned red, and he barked. "Landscape what now? That's no career for you. You're a part of this family, and the restaurant is our legacy." Mike sneered. "What are you going to do? Plant flowers for a living?" My cheeks burned, but I held my ground. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm good at it, and I love it." Mom's expression wavered between confusion and concern. "Jenny, be sensible. You can't make a living off playing in the dirt." I rose to my feet, a surge of defiance coursing through me. "It's not just playing in the dirt, Mom. It's creating something beautiful, something real. I'm not asking for your approval, but I am telling you, this is my decision." Dad slammed his hand on the table, his voice booming. "If you choose this foolishness, you're on your own. Don't expect any help from us." A knot tightened in my stomach, but my voice remained steady. "Fine, I'll do it on my own." Grandma Rose, who had been quietly knitting in the corner, finally spoke. Her voice was calm but carried weight. "Joe, let the girl follow her heart. She's got a gift, and it would be a sin to waste it." Her eyes fixed on Dad. Dad let out a frustrated grunt, turning away. "Fine, do what you want, but don't come crying to us when it all falls apart." I turned to leave the room, my heart pounding. Mike called out after me, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Good luck, gardener. Let's see how far those flowers get you." Stepping into college life felt like diving into deep water, thrilling yet daunting. I, Jenny, was far from the familiar paths of my family's expectations, ready to carve my own way in the world of landscape design. I still remember the buzz of the first day in class, the room swirling with the energy of eager students. I found a spot in the back, trying to shrink into the shadows. That's when Zoe, A girl with fire engine red hair and eyes full of mischief dropped into the seat next to me. "Hey there, Nudie." "I'm Zoe, a first-timer in landscape design." I gave a shy nod. "Yeah, I'm Ginny. It's all a bit overwhelming." Zoe's laugh was loud and genuine. "You'll fit right in. Wait till you get your hands into the real dirt. It's epic. What dragged you into this world?" I hesitated, the disapproval of my family still fresh. "I've always loved plants, the outdoors. It's where I feel right, you know." Her grin widened. "Perfect place for you then." Classes were a whirlwind of learning and creating. I absorbed things like a sponge, from the science of soils to the art of design. I was finally speaking a language I loved. After one particularly intense session, Mr. Davidson, our professor, a man as tall and sturdy as an oak, called me over. "Jenny, your designs, there's something else. You've got a real knack for this." His voice was serious but encouraging. I was stunned. "Really? Thank you, Mr. Davidson. I'm just trying to do my best." He leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "There's potential in you. Don't let it go to waste. Push harder." His words became my mantra. I started to live in the studio, my designs becoming more ambitious, more expressive. It was exhausting but exhilarating. But even in those moments of joy, a part of me yearned for my family. Despite everything, one quiet evening, I gathered the courage to call home. The phone rang, each tone heavy with anticipation. Finally, Mom's voice came through, sharp like a knife's edge. "What? What do you want, Ginny?" Her tone stung, but I pushed on. "I just wanted to check in, see how everyone is." She snorted, her voice dripping with scorn. "Oh, now you care, after running off to play in the dirt, abandoning your own family." I gritted my teeth, struggling to maintain a steady voice. "I didn't abandon anyone, Mom. I just chose a different path." Her laugh was bitter. "A dead-end path, you mean? Don't expect us to be here waiting when it all crumbles around you." The call ended, leaving a sour taste in my mouth. However, it also ignited a fire within me. I dove back into my work with renewed determination, intent on proving not only to my family, but to myself that I was on the right path. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of a phone call during my final year of college. It was Aunt Clara, my mom's sister, her voice shaky and strained. "Jenny, it's about your Grandma Rose. She passed away last night." Aunt Clara's voice cracked with emotion, and I felt the ground slip away beneath me. Grandma Rose had been my rock, the one person who believed in my dreams. Losing her felt like losing a part of myself. The funeral was a somber affair, my family stiff and formal. Dad, Mom, and Mike looked like strangers to me. After the service, I'd overheard Mom talking to Aunt Clara. "I still can't believe she left that house to Jenny. What's she going to do with it? She can barely take care of herself." Mom's voice dripped with disapproval. I felt a surge of anger, but bit my tongue, avoiding a confrontation. The will reading was a few days later. Grandma Rose had left me her house, the beautiful garden haven where I had spent countless hours. My family was shocked, their whispers sharp as thorns. Why would she leave it to Jenny? "She's never around anyway," Mike muttered under his breath. Dad's face was like thunder. "This is ridiculous. That house could have been sold. Put money into the restaurant." I stood up, my voice steady but firm. "Grandma knew I loved that house, that garden. It was where we spent so much time together. I'm going to keep it, just as she wanted." Mom's response was cold and harsh. "So you're just going to live there alone, playing in the dirt? What a waste." Their words stung, but I had made up my mind. I moved into Grandma's house, immersing myself in the garden she had loved so dearly. I started renovating the place, pouring my heart into every plant, every flower bed. As the months passed, I transformed Grandma's garden into something truly special. It became my sanctuary, a place where I could be myself away from the judgment and expectations of my family. The day the invitation to Mike's wedding arrived at my doorstep was a day of mixed feelings. It was a fancy piece of paper with golden letters against a white background, representing a part of my life I had left behind. Staring at it, A storm of emotions churned inside me. I decided to go, but on my terms. I dressed in a way that felt true to me, elegant but simple, a far cry from the dirt-stained clothes they remembered. Entering the restaurant, the sights and sounds of my past life engulfed me. I spotted my family across the room, Mom, Dad, and Mike, all decked out, looking like a picture-perfect family. Bracing myself, I walked over. "Jenny, I didn't think you'd accept the invitation." Mom's voice was sharp, cutting through the noise. "I came to see Mike get married." "It's a family event, isn't it?" I replied, trying to keep my voice level. Mike glanced at me, his smirk familiar and unwelcome. "What's the matter? Ran out of bushes to trim?" Decided to play dress up for a change. I felt a familiar sting, but I brushed it off. "I'm just here to wish well, Mike." It was then that his bride, a tall woman with a haughty look, chimed in. "Oh, this is the infamous gardener sister. Did you manage to scrub the dirt from under your nails, dear, or is it your natural look?" Her words, sharp and mocking, hung in the air. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let her see how deep they cut. "I clean up just fine, thanks for asking." "Congratulations to you both." Dad's eyes were cold, his voice colder. "Your being here doesn't erase the past, Jenny. You chose your path." Their words were like thorns, but I had grown a thick skin. "I'm not here to rehash old arguments, just wanted to wish Mike a happy married life." I was quickly ushered to a small table in the corner, away from the family. Sitting there, I could feel the curious stares and hushed whispers. "That's the gardener," they whispered, "the black sheep of the family." But as I sat there, a sense of pride welled up in me. Yes, I was the gardener, the one who had dared to follow her own path. I was no longer the shy, unsure girl they remembered, but a woman who had found her strength, who had bloomed in spite of them. My discomfort only grew as the evening stretched on. Sipping my drink, I tried to make myself invisible. But that plan fell apart when I caught the eye of some guys I knew from childhood. Mike's friends, the same ones who used to join him in mocking me. "Look who's here, the family's little dirt digger," one of them, Jake, sneered as they approached, a smirk plastered on his face. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Actually, it's a landscape designer, but I wouldn't expect you to understand the difference." Their laughter was harsh, grating. "Oh, listen to her. Thinks she's all high and mighty now," Chris added with a scoff. I bit back a sharp retort, my hands clenching under the table. I worked hard for my success. My job is more than just playing in the dirt. Their amusement was cut short when an elderly man at the next table interjected. He had been listening, his expression growing increasingly disapproving. "I've seen this young lady's work, the new park downtown. That's hers. It's outstanding, shows what you know." The group was visibly taken aback, their smugness faltering. Muttering under their breath, they slunk away, their egos bruised. Emboldened, I decided to venture out from my safe corner, mingling through the crowd, dodging glances and whispers. That's when I overheard Mike speaking to a group of his friends. "She's always been the odd one, more into her plants than real work," Mike said, his voice laced with a mix of amusement and disdain. His friend laughed loudly. "Every family's got its black sheep, huh?" Their words were like a slap, raw and stinging. I walked away, my heart pounding, reminding myself their opinions didn't define me. As I weaved through the crowd, I bumped into my cousin Lucy, a quiet presence in our loud family. "Hey, Jenny, I've seen some of your designs. They're really something," she said, her voice sincere. I managed a small smile. "Thanks, Lucy. It means a lot, especially today." Lucy looked at me, her eyes understanding. "I never agreed with how they treated you. You're doing amazing things. I'm glad you stuck to your path." Her words were a small comfort amidst the thorns of the evening. We chatted briefly, a momentary respite from the tension. As Lucy drifted away, I returned to my corner, feeling the weight of the evening. The loud music, clinking glasses, and bursts of laughter around me felt like they were happening in a different world. I sat there, sipping my drink, longing for the celebration to end. The wedding night was winding down, its fancy aura overshadowed by my own tangled feelings. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any more surreal, the mayor, a distant relative of Mike's bride, took the stage for his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's a delight to be here," he began, his voice booming across the room. "But tonight, I want to highlight a special guest among us, a true star in the world of landscape design, Jenny." Hearing my name, I nearly choked on my drink. I stood up hesitantly, feeling like a deer caught in headlights. The mayor beamed at me. "Jenny here is the brilliant mind behind the transformation of our city park. She's a celebrated landscape designer who's won multiple awards for her incredible work. Let's give her the recognition she deserves." The room erupted into applause, a sound that felt foreign to me. I glanced at my family's table and saw their faces, a mix of shock and embarrassment. Mike's bride leaned towards him, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Is he talking about your sister, the gardener?" Mike mumbled something, looking like he wished the floor would swallow him up. The mayor's praise continued. "Jenny's work has revitalized our city. She's a true talent." Amidst the clapping, I felt a surge of confidence. The mayor's words were like a light, dispelling the shadows of doubt and scorn from my family. Seizing the moment, I decided to speak up. "Thank you, Mayor, for your kind words. It's an honor to contribute to our city's beauty." I paused, my gaze sweeping over the crowd, settling on my family. It's funny, isn't it? How life turns out. Mike, you and your bride are perfect for each other. Your shared talent for rudeness to others is quite remarkable. The room went silent, the air thick with tension. My parents, my brother, and his fiancée blushed deep red, their shame as visible as if I'd slapped them. Mom's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. "Jenny, what are you saying? This is your brother's wedding." I met her gaze unflinching. "Just speaking the truth, Mom, something our family seems to struggle with." Mike stood up, his face red with anger. "You can't come here and talk to us like that." I held my ground, my voice steady. "I've earned my right to speak, Mike. Maybe it's time you all listened." The confrontation ended with Mike sitting down defeated, and the room slowly buzzing back to life. The mayor gave me a nod of respect before moving on. As I sat back down, the weight of the night lifted slightly. I had spoken my piece, stood up for myself in a way I never had before. I was no longer just the gardener or the outcast. I was Jenny, a recognized landscape designer, someone who had grown past her family's narrow expectations. After Mike's wedding, word got out about my success as a landscape designer. People were buzzing about the awards I'd won and the projects I'd aced. It felt like stepping into the sunlight after years in the shadows. And then my family came calling. One afternoon, while I was busy sketching out a new garden design, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice had a sweetness to it that felt out of place. "Jenny, darling, we've been hearing so much about your work. Your father and I are so proud of you." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? That's a change of tune." There was a pause on the line. "Well, we were thinking maybe you could come over. We'd love to see you, catch up on things." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Catch up or catch onto my bank account? I shot back, "Mom, that's not fair. We're family." The word family hit a nerve. Family like when you all but disown me for following my dreams. It seems like family matters when there's money in the picture. Before she could respond, I ended the call. I wasn't about to let them back into my life just because they smelled success. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. Mike was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking everywhere but at me. "Hey, Jenny, can we talk?" He mumbled. I crossed my arms. "This should be good. What do you want, Mike?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I know we haven't been great, but you're doing well. I was wondering if you could, help me out a bit." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Help you out after years of calling me the gardener and laughing at my ambitions? Mike's face reddened. "I didn't mean it like that. It's just that things are tough." I cut him off. "Save it, Mike. I'm not your ATM. You and the family made it clear how you felt about me. You can't just waltz back into my life when it's convenient." He opened his mouth to argue, but I stopped him. "No, Mike. You made your bed. now lie in it. After he left, I sat in my garden surrounded by the beauty I had created. My phone rang a few more times over the next week, more attempts at reconciliation from my family, but I didn't answer. I was done with their fair weather affection. I had built a life for myself, one that didn't need their validation or their greed. I was thriving in my own right, and that was all that mattered. They had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. As I looked around at the plants and flowers that were a testament to my hard work and passion, I realized I had everything I needed right here. I was happy, successful, and free from the toxic ties that had once bound me. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a whole new book, my book. And I was going to make sure it was a bestseller, written on my own terms, in my own style. The new growth in my life was just starting, and I was ready for whatever came next. My sister-in-law, now mute and bedridden, was entrusted to my care by my in-laws, who had decided to take a vacation in Hawaii. Just before departing, my husband Jack made it clear that taking care of her was my responsibility, emphasizing that I shouldn't slack off. As soon as Jack and his family left for their vacation, my sister-in-law, surprisingly, sat up and suggested that we get going too. My name is Lisa, and at 29, I had abandoned my teenage dream of becoming a pop star, realizing its fleeting nature. I ended up in my late 20s, dating Jack, whom I met through a friend, largely due to my mother's persistent desire to see her grandchild. Jack, despite having once aspired to enter the entertainment industry, now worked at a prestigious trading company in downtown Manhattan. After college, I had worked at a bank until I got married, at which point I quit my job. On a visit to Jack's parents' house, I learned about his younger sister Lucy, who, as a child, had contracted encephalitis from influenza, leaving her mute and bedridden due to brain damage. Lucy's mother had primarily cared for her, but surprisingly, Lucy and I got along well, communicating through sign language. Over time, I naturally picked up sign language, and our bond strengthened. Despite this, my mother-in-law, who was quite different from Lucy, was consistently sarcastic and critical of me. Jack and I lived in a condo about 30 minutes away, yet my mother-in-law would occasionally show up unannounced, nitpicking and issuing traditional instructions like keeping Jack's shoes clean and neatly folding laundry. She referred to Jack as Jackie and insisted on outdated practices, such as not going to bed before him, regardless of how late he got home. During our dating and early marriage days, Jack had always been kind and never disagreed with me, despite his mother's influence. Initially, Jack was incredibly considerate. If I mentioned feeling unwell and suggested having dinner outside, he readily agreed. Likewise, if I expressed interest in a designer bag, he would purchase it for me the following month. However, approximately a year into our marriage, Jack began to change, or perhaps reverted to his former self. He started coming home late from work, consistently smelling of alcohol. On weekends, Jack claimed increasing work responsibilities, making him too busy for family time. Oddly, even during visits to his parents' home, he would decline my invitations to join him. Frustrated, I decided to confront him about the growing distance between us. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I expressed. Jack glared briefly before dismissing my concerns. "That's not true. You're overthinking things," he replied. Unconvinced, I pointed out that he rarely spoke to me anymore. He told me to stop bringing it up and walked away, ending the conversation abruptly. One Sunday, Jack surprised me by announcing he was going home. This was a departure from his usual refusal to have me accompany him on such visits. Eagerly, I offered to join him, expressing a desire to see Lucy as well. Jack's reaction was mixed, and he remarked on our seemingly close friendship. Despite his subtle grimace, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. Along the way, we stopped at a bakery to buy pastries as a gift. Jack's mother, who typically frowned at my presence, lit up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, she greeted us with a frown, as if displeased to see me. Undeterred, I handed her the pastries, and her expression changed like a child receiving a cherished toy. Curious about Jack's father, I inquired about him, learning he was out at a meeting. Jack's mother asked if I needed something, to which I replied that I didn't, just having something on my mind. He replied, "I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked. Jack retorted, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" His mother chimed in, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." Recognizing the futility of arguing, I chose not to respond. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. Jack seized the opportunity, saying, "Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss." She inquired, "What is it?" Jack proposed, "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii. How about you, sis?" She replied, "I'll pass. I don't have a passport." I was taken aback. Jack, usually busy with work, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. Concerned, I asked, "Jack, is everything all right with your job?" His mother seemed displeased with my involvement and said, "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made." "You're really nosy, aren't you?" Jack's mother then revealed the real reason for the meeting. I was to take care of Lucy during their vacation. Though momentarily surprised, I realized staying with Lucy was more appealing than going to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. I agreed to take care of Lucy, but I questioned why they had to bring me all the way there for such a discussion. Jack explained he expected resistance and wanted his mother to convince me forcefully if needed. Dumbfounded, I left the room to go to Lucy's room. Lucy was delighted to see me and asked how I'd been. When I explained Jack asked me to come along to their parents' house, Lucy remarked on Jack's change in behavior. Lucy suggested I stay over, and we had a great time chatting. An hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. Lucy gave me a slight wink, hinting at a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Despite not going to Hawaii, I brought luggage to stay with Lucy for a week. As departure neared, the family insisted that taking care of Lucy was my job, and my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault." Unfazed, I returned to Lucy's room. At that moment, Lucy sprang up energetically and called out, "Come on, let's get going." This echoed a recent conversation where Lucy revealed she could walk and converse, a secret she had kept since last year. "I suppose, why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale, saying, "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." Surprised by this revelation, and considering the usual coldness from my mother-in-law towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, "I thought so. Is that so?" Lucy confirmed, "Yeah, my mom despises me. And I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." Curious about her father's knowledge, I asked, "And your father?" Lucy explained, "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." Understanding the situation, I said, "I see. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too." Perplexed, I asked, "Huh, what do you mean?" Lucy explained, "I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort." Her proposal caught me completely off guard, and I responded, "What? I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy. But do you even have a passport?" Confidently, Lucy revealed, "Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours." Excited about the unexpected turn of events, I said, "I see. I'm really looking forward to this." That's how we ended up at the airport, Lucy and I, arriving in Hawaii early in the morning. My father-in-law, who had been supportive, was there to see us off. Expressing gratitude, I said, "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." He reassured me, saying, "Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy." After landing, we took a taxi from the airport and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room, and as we settled in, I mentioned to Lucy, "Your father seems pretty well-traveled." Lucy shared, "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." Planning a surprise for Jack and the family, Lucy said, "So what's the plan? I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." Excited about the idea, I replied, "That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from jet lag?" Lucy agreed. "That sounds like a good idea." Unable to sleep on the plane, we took a shower, climbed into bed, and quickly fell asleep. Waking up around late afternoon, Lucy was already awake and starting to wear makeup. Apologizing for sleeping too much, I reassured her, "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too. We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle." Around 7 o'clock, I suggested, "I'll go and check the restaurant." As I looked for Jack and his party, I found them dining joyfully from the shadows near the entrance. Venturing deeper into the restaurant, I spotted the back of a young woman I didn't recognize. This puzzled me, as there hadn't been such a woman when they left Jack's parents' house. Straining my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. "I'm glad it's not that woman today. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her." My mother-in-law was giving the woman a smile she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's fate, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Lucy that it took a while. "I'm sorry, I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before." "What?" I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival as we were sitting quite close. We could hear their conversation, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile, a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time. Lucy, when did you regain your ability to speak?" "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year." "Then why did you hide it until now?" "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa," Jack retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up. "Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time. And now you're making these outrageous claims, he barked. Jack was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described being with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket. So, I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment, I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. Lisa, dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack. This woman is not involved with Jack, she pleaded. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her. Isn't that exciting? I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal. My company has strict rules about this, he implored. What's that? You don't sound sorry at all, I replied. Jack appeared taken aback, then tried again. Lisa, I beg you, forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job, he confessed. Though your place sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman, I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, Please forgive my son, tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home. Hearing this, Jack cried out at the top of his lungs, Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation. At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Lucy and I were also surprised by the turn of events. I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me, who was very easy to talk to. I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she'd assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, Please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman. She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the 2. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, What do you want? I don't want to see your faces. Jack replied in a thin voice, I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job, and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food. My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper. I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you. My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you. And even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house. I have a new girlfriend. I'm going to live here with her, so I'm divorcing you. And you're going to go to your parents. I don't understand what you are saying. I don't need you anymore. I can leave you with my parents if you want to be a breadwinner or a housekeeper, Noah. You understand, my parents-in-law and my husband laugh at me. They are the worst kind of people. But for me, it's better that way. Then you all need to leave. My name is Noah, and I am a 32-year-old office worker. I have lived my whole life working after graduating from college. I started working for a major company. For about 10 years, I worked hard and obtained qualifications for promotions. Thanks to that, I am now department manager at such a young age. I am blessed with a boss who always has something useful to say to me. In a group of highly motivated and talented subordinates, I was very fulfilled in my work, but my personal life was not at all fulfilling. I had a boyfriend once when I was a student, but none since I started working. Worried about my situation, a friend of mine hosted a dinner party for me. That is where I met Matthew. He was kind, had a nice smile, and gave me the impression that he was very personable. And since he was the same age as me, we had a lot in common, and it was fun talking to him. We soon became friends, exchanged contact, information, and started going out to eat alone together. Then he confessed his feelings for me, and we started going out together. We got along well, and he proposed to me, and we ended up getting married. I was so happy to be married to the man I loved so much, and soon after, I went to his parents' house to greet them. His parents were very kind and welcomed me with open arms. "Noah, it's nice to meet you. I can't believe such a beautiful person came to be Matthew's bride. I am so proud of my son for bringing a good woman here. Hey, Mom and Dad, stop it. Noah is getting scared. Oh my, if you really think so, you can say it. That's right. It's a compliment, so it's okay." His parents were very friendly and easy to talk to, just like him. "Noah works for a major company, doesn't she? Oh no, that's great. It's cool to be a woman who can work hard. Will you quit your job when you get married?" "No, I'm going to keep working." "Well, you've got a good job at a good company. That's better." I was relieved. According to my friends around me, I had heard that their mother-in-law told them to quit the job. They say that they are often told that it is a wife's job to support her husband, so I was glad. I thought to myself that my would-be mother-in-law was generous. After greeting my parents, we were married. My heart was filled with excitement for the new married life that was about to begin. My husband moved into the house I was living in, and we started our new married life together. I'm very happy to be newlyweds with my husband, whom I love very much. I'm happy to be able to be at home with him all the time, and I'm also happy to have him home when I come home from work. 6 months into our life together, my husband said he had something he wanted to discuss with me. "If you don't mind, I'd like you to live with my father and mother." "What do you mean, live together?" "Yes, they are getting old, and I am worried about many things." "I see. I can certainly understand how my husband feels. My parents are about the same age as my husband's parents, but my brother and his wife are currently living with them, so I have nothing to worry about. However, my husband is an only child, so it is understandable that he is concerned about his parents." "Does this mean we are living with my in-laws?" "Yes, it would. But do they have a room available for us?" "They use every room for some reason or another." "About that, if you like, I think it would be a good idea to renovate my parents' house and make it a 2-family house." 2 families? Yes, if we do that, it will be much cheaper than buying a new house. We can live in a beautiful and spacious house while still maintaining our privacy, right? I see. I thought it was indeed an attractive proposal. My in-laws are very kind people, and we won't be together all the time. If we live in 2 houses, it would be less stressful. Yes, that's fine. Really? Thank you. My mom and dad will be so happy. I was happy to see my husband so happy. Later, my in-laws came to visit us, and both of them were very grateful. I even thought that with such a kind and cheerful family, I wouldn't mind not having two households. Soon after that, my husband and I discussed remodeling my in-laws' house. The cost would be around $100,000. But as we were discussing it, my husband made a surprising remark. Actually, I have a favor to ask you. Can you pay for the remodeling? What do you mean, the full amount? Why then? My husband looked very uncomfortable. Actually, we are in debt. I was surprised. Neither my husband nor my parents-in-law had ever said anything like that when we were dating or when we got married. I was surprised. How much debt do they have? About $150,000. What? I thought it would be a few tens of thousands of dollars, but I was surprised at the amount of money. And I ended up shouting out loud. It wasn't so bad at first, but it gradually grew, and even if I tried to pay it back, I couldn't. My parents are already living on a pension. I can't pay them back as much as I'd like, and the debt is getting bigger and bigger. I see. I could not hide my surprise and upset at the sudden and shocking revelation. I had no idea that my parents-in-law owed me such a large sum of money. Noah, I need a favor. Will you help me pay off my father and father-in-law's debt? They can't afford it anymore, and I don't make a very good salary either. Then isn't it going to be tough to renovate the house and live together as two families? No, that's important, so let's go ahead as planned. You have asked me to pay for the remodeling and your father's debt. I'm on the hook for $250,000, I know. I'm talking about difficult things, but I want to take care of my life with Noah, and I want to protect my mom and dad. It's because I love both my parents and Noah. I'm sorry. I'm being greedy, but if you really love me, please help me. I'll pay you back little by little. I was very distressed. My husband and my in-laws have no one to turn to but me, and I knew that my husband really loved me. But at that time, I was completely deceived by my husband's words. Love is blind, I think, and that is exactly what it is. Okay, I'll pay for it. I agreed to do so. Then my husband said, "Thank you so much," and he shook my hand and thanked me very much. He told my parents-in-law, and later they came to our house and apologized to me. My mother-in-law even shed tears of joy. I have to do my best from now on. I had to take over my in-laws' debt, and I was determined to do it. However, although I had some savings, I was afraid to pay it all at once. So for now, I decided to pay about $330,000 from my savings and then pay the rest in installments. Then my in-laws joined us, and we talked about repayment. I explained to my in-laws about the installments I had just made. They said that I could do whatever I wanted. Then why don't you transfer the money directly to the account for debt repayment? We're not very good at managing money, and I'm a little afraid to transfer a lot of money. When my husband said this, my parents-in-law nodded. Indeed, it would be time-consuming for me to transfer the money to my parents-in-law's account and then for them to transfer it to their repayment account. And since it was a large sum, I would not like it if the money was not transferred in the middle of the process. So I agreed to that. Once the conversation was settled, my parents-in-law looked very relieved. Now we don't have to be afraid of the monthly debt collection. That has been really scary. Dad and Mom, you should thank Noah properly. Well, I can't tell you how many times I thanked you. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. I'm so glad Noah came to be his wife. No. I was happy that my in-laws were happy. However, I felt a little uncomfortable because I thought that they might think of me as a money spinner. When they said those last words, I felt a little bad, but I wanted to take care of my beloved husband's family. With that in mind, I began to make payments, and at the same time, we remodeled our house and completed our two-family home. We started living together in a beautiful and spacious house. My parents-in-law were very happy, and my husband's eyes lit up at the new house. I too enjoyed cooking with the new system kitchen, and I was glad to have the remodeling done. It is more convenient and closer to work here. If commuting time is shortened, that gives me more time to spare. I can also make good use of that free time to study. I was spending my days working hard to pay off my debt. However, there was something that bothered me a little. That is, my husband did not help me pay off the debt at all. When I told him about my parents-in-law's debt, he said he would help me pay it off, and yet he has shown absolutely no sign of paying for it out of his own paycheck. When I mentioned this to him before, he told me that his salary was not enough at all to make the payment. I asked my husband what his take-home pay was and asked him to show me his pay stubs, but he stubbornly refused, so I don't know how much he earns, but he has to repay his debts. I worked hard for about a year to pay off the debt. At that time, my parents-in-law asked me how much money I had left to repay. If it's been a year, well, you haven't lost that much, yeah. At most, you'd be paying back about $10,000 to $155,000. Well, just to give you an idea, we paid back about $30,000 this year, so the remainder is roughly $90,000. When I said this, my parents-in-law were extremely surprised. What? You paid back that much, Noah? That's amazing. At that pace, you will finish paying back the loan in about 3 years. If I work hard, I'll be able to pay it off. Thank you so much. My parents-in-law were crying and happy. I thought that if my husband's parents were happy like this, it was worth all the hard work. A few days later, however, I encountered an unexpected situation. I had to work overtime that day, so I told my husband I would be home late. However, the work went surprisingly smoothly, and moreover, many of us had free hands, so we were able to leave on time. So, I hurried home as usual, thinking I would cook dinner for my husband. But when I opened the front door, there were my parents-in-law's shoes. Oh, my mother-in-law and her family are here. I thought they had something to do, so I walked toward the living room. Then, I heard my parents-in-law and my husband talking about something. You were right to marry that woman, weren't you, Matthew? You did great. I can't believe you got a woman with that much money. When I heard she works for a big company, I was really cautious and seduced her. You should be more grateful. Oh my, you're one of the people who created that debt. What? But I'm the one with the least. What are you talking about? How much did you spend on horse racing? Your gambling is terrible. I get a jackpot once in a while, so there were times when we were in the black. How can you be in the black when you owe $150,000? But at this rate, we'll be able to get out of debt and get back on track. That's really great. And she even remodeled our house. I got a really good wife. Well, I'm going to throw her away after she pays off the debt. My husband and parents-in-law laughed. I was so stunned that I couldn't move from the front door for a while. After calming down a little, I made a loud noise as I closed the lock and said, "I'm home," from the front door. When I went to the living room, my parents-in-law and husband greeted me with smiles. "Oh, Noah, welcome home. Good job, good job. Well then, we're going back to our room. Let's have dinner together again." I was so afraid of this gentle smile of my parents-in-law because I had heard their earlier conversation. Likewise, this man who was pretending to be a good husband with a smile on his face shocked me. I wondered what I had been doing to try to pay them back. "Didn't you say you had to work late today?" "Yeah, I've been working a lot more than I expected, so I decided to hurry up and cook dinner and came home on time." Didn't know that. I tried my best to act calm until dinner so that my husband would not realize what I had done. Then, when my husband was taking a bath, I stayed in my room and cried alone. But crying as hard as I could made me want to give my husband and in-laws a break. I cried as hard as I could. From then on, I acted quickly. I began to prepare for the divorce and then steadily made plans for what to do after the divorce. About 3 months passed. I pretended to be happy and told my husband that I had paid off my parents-in-law's debt. My husband rolled his eyes. What? You paid off the debt? That $150,000 that was supposed to take roughly 3 years, right? Actually, I have quite a bit of money saved up, but I was afraid to pay it off all at once. So I started taking out a little bit from my salary and savings. But we were already below $100,000, and I thought it would be better to pay it all off at once. I see. And then I asked, "Do you mind if I check?" and asked to see my bank book. I showed my husband the bank book. Oh, it's true. $90,000 was paid all at once. My husband tried to contain his excitement as much as possible, but I could see that he was itching to get out of there. Wow, Noah, thank you. My dads are going to love this. My husband put his hands on his face and seemed to be crying, but I knew it was just an act, and he was pretending to cry. Soon after that, my parents-in-law also came and thanked me. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I met Noah. You're like God. If I had not known any of this, I would have surely been happy to be along for the ride. Having been deceived, but I already know what these people are really like. And I only acted because I was ready for my plan. A few days later, my husband asked to speak with me. My husband looked very serious. What on earth? I'm sorry, Noah, but you have to leave me. What? What do you mean? I acted surprised on purpose. I have a new girlfriend. What? I'm going to live here with her, so I'm divorcing you, and you're going to my parents' place. I was really taken aback by Matthew's unexpected statement. I knew from eavesdropping on our earlier conversation that my husband would leave me when he finished paying his debts. However, I did not expect him to openly declare his infidelity. What did he mean by having me go to his in-laws after you left me? I don't really understand what you mean. When I said this, my husband's mood turned sour, saying you're not very understanding at all. I don't need you anymore, but as a breadwinner or a housekeeper, I can keep you here. Oh no. Then the front door opened and my in-laws came in. Matthew, did you finally tell her? Yeah, I told her. I wish I could have been there for that moment. No, that's how it is. You can come to our house if you do the chores for us. Of course, we'll charge you rent though. My parents-in-law and my husband laughed at me. They are the worst people ever. But that's more than I can say for me. Then all of you need to leave. My in-laws rolled their eyes at my comment. What are you talking about? Have you forgotten? I can easily pay for the renovation myself. You changed the name of the house to mine. That's why I have the rights to this house. I can decide who to let live in the house and who to kick out. The faces of my in-laws turned blue at my comment. Then they finally remembered about the title of the house. I was really dumbfounded. I'm sorry, but you can't live here anymore. If we get divorced, you'll be strangers. Oh no? My in-laws realized the gravity of the situation. But my husband, not wanting to be outdone by me, retorted, "But you took over our debt and paid it in full. You're the one who's losing money. If we had no debt, we could at least afford a new place to live." That's true. Thank you for letting us live in a nice house while you pay our debts. My in-laws and husband said as much. So I told them the fact. I'm sorry, but I didn't pay off the rest of the $90,000 debt. What? No. But you had money missing from your bank book. That was just a separate account that I created and moved around. So the debt hasn't changed from $90,000. I just haven't had the collections come yet because I've been paying large sums of money continuously. But I think it's time for them to come. So you are responsible for paying the rest. My husband and in-laws went pale. Then I shot them a warning. Matthew, you told me you were having an affair, so you should pay the alimony. I'll charge your partner for the affair too. Oh no, she went out with me even though she's beautiful because I own a house and have money. If they charge me alimony, she'll dump me. I don't care anything about that, Noah. I apologize. Please don't leave us. My husband is afraid of being dumped by the adulterer, and my in-laws are afraid of being dumped by me. They are truly selfish and scum parents and children in every way. I will have nothing to do with you people anymore, no matter what you say. I have also put this house on the market. I will also have you pay your debt of $60,000 that I paid on your behalf through my lawyer." Oh no, the in-laws froze, stunned by the loss of everything they had. I then demanded a divorce and alimony from my husband through my lawyer. I also demanded alimony from the adulterer. I demanded $6,000 from my in-laws for what I had paid them. Actually, that renovated in-law house sold for about $200,000. It was in a good location, and there was a family that was just looking for a duplex, so we got a good price. They were able to buy it. So I had to pay $160,000, which included the $60,000 I owed on the debt and $100,000 for the renovation. I had paid $160,000, but gained $40,000 as a result. In addition, I also get alimony from my ex-husband and the affair partner, which is a very positive situation. On top of that, I was able to get a small payment of $60,000 from my ex-parents-in-law. I am the one who is getting the most out of this situation. I think this is a reasonable request because the damage I have suffered was so bad that I distrusted people. As for me having that much savings to begin with, I was trying to learn how to invest so that I could pay off my in-laws' debts as quickly as possible. And since I had quite a lot of savings to begin with, I put a few tens of thousands of dollars or so into investments. I found that my assets had grown quite a bit in about a year. Plus, I had gotten a raise, so I was getting paid quite well. So I was able to take such a drastic step because I had saved a lot of money. I was the biggest beneficiary, and my former in-laws were back in debt, and they lost their house. To be honest, I think they deserved it because they cheated me like fraud. People like that should go to hell. For once, I should reflect on what happened to me this time and develop a better eye for people. From now on, I will also continue to save and increase my assets so that I can live a luxurious life in my old age. And I want to make many happy memories with people I can truly trust. What did you think of this story? And please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Hey, aren't you going to contribute more around the house? If you're going to be that kind of wife, maybe you should just leave. I sat there, stunned by my mother-in-law's harsh words. Her cold, intense gaze bore into me. "Francisco has us, and we don't need you anymore. You always look tired and seem to accomplish nothing," chimed in my unhelpful sister-in-law with a dismissive tone. "This is too much, Francisco. Don't you think your mother and sister are going overboard?" I pleaded. "I'm doing my best too." When I sought help from my husband, he responded with a demeaning attitude. "I agree with my mother and sister," Francisco interjected. "I'm busy with work, and it's becoming a problem if you don't help with the chores. Besides, my relationship with the new part-time girl is progressing, and you're just baggage. Can you quickly pack and live somewhere else?" Shocked by Francisco's words, I glanced at the three of them. They all seemed to blame me. A surge of rage welled up in my chest. I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and said, "I understand. I need some time." My in-laws, who had once relied on me, were now falling apart. My name is Michelle, and I'm 32 years old. I work diligently, both at my job and in household chores. While it's not uncommon for women to continue working after marriage, I truly love my job and strive to succeed in the company I joined right after college. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, my husband, Francisco, approached with a pleading look. "Michelle, can you take care of this?" He handed me a file crammed with receipts and bills. "You should manage the cafe's finances properly." I smiled and responded, "Sorry, but I'm really bad at that." I met Francisco while he was working part-time at a cafe I frequented. After a few chats, we began dating and eventually talked about marriage. Now, Francisco owns the cafe, but despite his ability to run the business, he struggles with paperwork and always asks me to handle the accounting. As I sighed, my mother-in-law added, "Michelle, I suddenly feel like eating Chinese food tonight. Could you rinse the rice well? Also, Mia and the kids are coming this weekend, so we need to plan their meals." "Sure, I got it." I nodded to my mother-in-law's request and hurriedly left the house. Before marriage, I was excited about my new life with Francisco. However, he suggested, "My mom's lonely by herself. Why don't we all live together in our big house?" So now I reside with his mother. To put it lightly, she's not proficient in household chores. When we moved in, the house was a bit of a mess. After my father-in-law passed away, she started living on a pension, which she mostly spends on dining out or ordering food. Francisco seems to believe that housework is a woman's job, making it my full responsibility. Francisco's sister, Nia, occasionally brings her kids home, and each time she does, my to-do list grows. I can't help but think that yet another chaotic weekend is approaching. Weekends, which should be precious times for recovering from the usual exhaustion, turn into moments where my sister-in-law's children ask to play or complain about being hungry. I find myself not only preparing meals in the kitchen, but also entertaining the children. Then, my sister-in-law drops a bombshell. "Michelle, I'm getting divorced and we'll be moving back here with the kids next month." I'm surprised, and for a moment, I'm lost for words. "Really? Do you have something to say?" she asks. "No, I was just thinking. It must have been hard. When are you moving?" "I want to move as soon as possible." Surprised that my sister-in-law and her children will be moving in, I hope that maybe she will help, and household chores will become more manageable. While we had a normal relationship, I anticipate that this change might bring us closer and result in her contributing to the chores. Despite my positive attitude, reality has other plans. Perhaps because she grew up with my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law appears to live a life devoid of housework. She spends most of her time lounging on the sofa, watching TV, and always has some snack with her. Observing her, I realize her neglect of housework might have contributed to her divorce. Now, with the added responsibility of preparing meals for her children and making lunches for kindergarten, my workload increases, and my free time diminishes. I had hoped for her assistance, but it's disappointing that it turns out to be a swing and a miss. Then, there comes a time when my work at the company suddenly becomes hectic. Every day, I start work early, do overtime, and return home exhausted to find the room overflowing with things, with no space to even walk. Seeing this scene each day, waves of fatigue wash over me. On top of that, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law complain, asking if dinner is ready yet or why I'm home so late. When I struggle to manage household chores, they coldly remark, "Michelle, there's a mountain of laundry waiting. Don't slack off just because you're busy." I internally protest, "Mother-in-law, I'm really trying my best." But before my sister-in-law can say anything, I frequently opted to keep my thoughts to myself. "Michelle, are you standing up to your mother-in-law? That's a bit bold. For the sake of the children, please try a little harder to make homemade meals," suggested my sister-in-law. I couldn't help but respond, "If you have so much free time at home, why don't you help out once in a while?" While doing household chores, I overheard Francisco's sister saying, "Haha, Francisco owns a store, so Michelle doesn't need to work, right? If that's the case, maybe you should try a little harder at home." Behind their words, I felt the mounting pressure that I should be doing more. That night, at the peak of my stress, I decided to speak my mind to Francisco. "I've been so busy lately, and neither your mother nor your sister is helping out with household chores. It's really hard." "Michelle, you're not speaking ill of our family, are you?" Francisco's eyes sharpened a bit, and I braced myself. "That's not what I mean, but it's hard for me to do everything by myself. If you helped out once in a while, things would be a little easier for me. I'm busy managing the store. It's different from a regular job. Housework is the wife's responsibility, right?" Even though disappointed by his response, I sat and pondered. A good idea suddenly popped into my head, and I silently pumped my fist. I immediately grabbed my smartphone, opened my favorite online shop, and started adding necessary items to the cart. After completing the purchase, I went to bed satisfied. A few days later, my new electronic household appliances, which would become my lifelines, were delivered to our home. the latest washing machine, a cleaning robot that reaches every corner of the room, and a rice cooker that cooks delicious rice without much effort. Each of them was a savior, making my daily life just a little bit easier and more enjoyable. While setting up the new washing machine, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law suddenly appeared with surprised expressions. "Wait, Michelle, you got such a fancy washing machine, but the old one was still good, wasn't it?" Smiling gently, I replied, "The old one took a bit too long, and I heard this new one shortens the laundry time." Their gaze then shifted to the cleaning robot and the new kitchen appliances. "See, I've also upgraded these," I said, showing them off a bit. "All these things, cleaning robots and convenient cooking appliances." "Michelle, come over here for a moment," my mother-in-law said inside the room. Seeing the slightly surprised expressions of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I smirked to myself. Francisco sat next to me, and the four of us began our discussion. "Why did you buy so many things?" My mother-in-law raised her voice. "Do you really need all these new appliances? Isn't it just because you want to make things a bit easier?" she continued. "Well, I thought it would be nice if things around the house could run a bit more smoothly," I replied with a slightly troubled expression. But my mother-in-law chimed in, "Relying too much on machines, aren't we?" The sister-in-law waved her hand, but I responded, "The appliances we had can still be used. Francisco is working hard managing his store. Maybe you should be more frugal." Francisco nodded in agreement with his sister, and in a quiet voice, I murmured, "Maybe you're right." There was a hint of anger in my mother-in-law's eyes, and I stumbled over my words. "Are you even considering our household?" "I really am, but I'm just a bit exhausted," I replied. My mother-in-law raised her voice, exclaiming, "Enough. I can't believe you're our daughter-in-law." My sister-in-law, with a disgusted look, added, "I'll watch over Francisco. We don't need someone like you here." When I looked at Francisco, he said coldly, "I understand what Mom and Sis are saying. It's a bit difficult to have a wife who doesn't do housework." Looking at Francisco's face, my heart felt heavy. He continued with a cold smile. "I have my own store, so I decide how to use my money. But being with someone who spends on anything and everything might be difficult." I was shaken by his words, but I looked into Francisco's eyes and counted to 10. He added with a hint of cruelty, "Also, I've noticed things have been going well with that new part-time girl. She's more attractive than you are now. Maybe it's time for you to pack up and find a new place to live." A fire of anger surged within me, though I didn't voice it. Taking a step back and calming myself, I replied after a deep breath, "All right. I'll look for a new home. That's better." "Finally, you understand. I'll feel much better without you around," he said smugly. Francisco signed the divorce papers that night, and I moved to a nearby weekly rental apartment with just the bare essentials and the divorce paper. No one tried to stop me when I left. Did they ever really care about me? After submitting the divorce papers at the city office, I found a stylish apartment to start fresh. During this time, an unexpected opportunity came my way. A promotion I had been putting off because of my family situation. I seized this chance and began working as a section manager. Every day, as I dedicated myself entirely to my job, I felt a renewed sense of accomplishment. In the midst of these busy days, my phone rang. The caller ID showed it was my former mother-in-law. I thought we had nothing to do with each other anymore, right? Without checking her message, I swiped to dismiss the call. My new life had begun, and I wouldn't look back at the past. A year flew by. One weekend, as I was relaxing in my room, listening to my favorite music, my phone rang again. To my surprise, it was my former mother-in-law. Wondering what she wanted after all this time, I picked up. "Hello, is something wrong, Michelle?" I finally got through. "I didn't think you would answer after so many calls." "Well, it's been a while. What's going on?" I asked. She hesitated for a moment and then asked, "How's your new life?" Despite her probing tone, I replied cheerfully, "It's great. I love my new apartment, and work is going smoothly. I even got promoted and am living freely. That's good, Michelle. Can you come back home? I was taken aback and blurted out, "Why?" "We're struggling financially." I thought to myself, I knew it, and responded cautiously. Francisco's cafe only makes about $1,000 a month, right? If no one else in the family works, things could be tough. "You knew about that?" she asked. Yes, Francisco's cafe wasn't doing well. I was fully aware of its financial situation since I handled all the accounting. But he pretended to be the successful owner without understanding the real state of his business. It was almost laughable how oblivious he was. I handled all the finances and procurement, so of course. I sensed her shock. "You knew and didn't tell us?" "We had no idea you were doing so well in such a big company, or that you were contributing so much to the household expenses," my former mother-in-law exclaimed. I admitted, "Yes, I contributed more than $3,000 every month. Thanks to that, you all managed." The truth was, I used my salary to bridge the gap in Francisco's business losses. He seemed completely unaware of the situation, and after I left, it seemed reality hit hard. "Michelle, can you please come back?" she asked. Curious, I inquired, "So how's Francisco's cafe doing now?" She sighed. "We might have to close soon, and the part-time workers keep quitting." With an inward smirk, I commented on his slightly sloppy management style. "It's hard to keep it going for long, isn't it?" His little bit of pride doesn't help, not doing proper work. I mean, how many women out there do you think would be willing to support a guy like that? My former mother-in-law was momentarily at a loss for words. I continued somewhat sarcastically, "Wait, I'm a bit busy now. Since you left, the house is a mess. It's chaotic with things everywhere." Confused, I asked, "Wait, what do you mean?" She described the disarray of their home with belongings scattered everywhere, looking like a storeroom. Without anyone to cook, they were eating out, which was costing a lot. The washing machine broke down, and it seemed like there's no room in the budget to buy a new one. "Actually, the appliances that you took back, I was really relying on them," my former mother-in-law admitted. Puzzled, I asked, "Huh? Why is that?" "Those were for my convenience. Besides, I bought them myself, so it's okay for me to take them back, right?" She reluctantly agreed, "Yeah, I guess so. But I never realized housework was this challenging." With a firm tone, my former mother-in-law added, "With 3 adults in the house, how can it be that hard? What are Francisco and your daughter doing?" A hint of fatigue could be heard in her voice. As for Francisco, his staff members have been quitting, and sales have plummeted. As soon as he found out, he became really downcast and has just been lazing around at home. But Francisco used to spend his money from the store without any restraint, right? On top of that, Mia doesn't help at all. She doesn't do anything around the house and even gets her allowance from me. To be honest, living on just my pension for the 3 of us is really hard, she continued. I responded with a hint of sarcasm. "Ah, Mia once told me that I was unnecessary because she was there." My former mother-in-law desperately said, "Michelle, we're really in trouble. Living on just my pension for the 3 of us is quite tough." I firmly stated, "I have no intention of returning to that house. It must be hard living with all that baggage." She seemed to be at a loss for words. Seeing her like this made me feel a bit sorry for her. But as I was about to hang up, my former mother-in-law seemed eager to say something. "Michelle, I'm really sorry. Can you reconsider?" Her voice sounded a bit exhausted. I replied, "I wonder if we can ever spend days together with smiles again." "Ha! Was it that hard without me?" I asked with a mix of surprise and calmness. After a short pause, my former mother-in-law took a deep breath. "Yes, there's actually an issue with the property tax. We might have to let go of the house." I said, "I see, but I really don't want to get involved anymore. Decide what you're going to do with your family." I hung up without waiting for her next words. After that, I set it up so I wouldn't receive any more calls from her. In my room, holding my favorite mug filled with aromatic coffee, I enjoyed my time alone. looking at the outside scenery. A smile spontaneously appeared on my face. A few months later, when I passed by the cafe where Francisco used to work, I noticed the place was now quiet and empty. Recalling its past liveliness, I felt a bit nostalgic. It seems they really closed the shop. While walking around the old town, I became curious about my former in-laws' house and saw a sold sign. Coincidentally, I bumped into an old neighbor in town. According to her, those three had quickly sold their house and moved to a small apartment nearby. In their new home, there were always loud arguments and even the smell of garbage. It seems the neighbors are quite bothered, and it has become a bit of local gossip. I thought, it must be tough for them, but with a bit of effort, life can change. I wondered why they don't try. As I gazed at the old house, these thoughts wandered in my mind. A lot has happened to me since then, but I'm living each day to the fullest. In fact, a handsome guy from my workplace confessed, saying, "I really admire your hardworking nature." Now we're enjoying our dates, and I'm really looking forward to what the future holds. If I get married again, I really want to be happy. I'm feeling very excited about it now.